Leng Xiyue was hit by the Star Spirit high-tech forge and crossed to the Douluo Continent. As long as she had enough resources, she could cultivate spiritual energy and build a high-tech legion. However, she happened to be favored by Bibidong, who was not yet possessed by magic, and was accepted as her own disciple at this point. She embarked on a path of no return that abused Tang San. Tang San. Sister, please speak up and don't kill my mother. Xiao Wu. I am willing to work for you for 10,000 years in exchange for my mother's soul Oscar. I never thought that as a food-based soul master, I could become invincible at the same level through physical cultivation. Bibidong. Is it really worth destroying everything my disciple built to complete the mission of the Rakshasa god Leng Xiyue? I never thought there would be someone in this world who cared so much about my feelings. Heavenly dream. In front of that person, I didn't even have a basic understanding of spiritual power. Years later, when Qiandao Lu stood at the top of the battleship Wuhuan and headed to Haishan Island with the mighty navy, he could only sigh helplessly. Times have changed. The main body remains unchanged, which will increase the strength of various forces and the overall number of soul masters, with a large number of private settings. Keywords of the novel. Starting as Archbishop from Douluo without pop-ups. Starting as Archbishop from Douluo. Download the complete text, and starting as Archbishop from Douluo. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Journey to a different world with the Star Spirit Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Journey to a different world with the Star Spirit Girl. Oh, my head hurts so much. Am I dead now? After an unknown amount of time, Leng Xiyue slowly woke up, accompanied by severe pain and a feeling of weakness in her limbs. She remembered walking on the street shopping when suddenly a black hole appeared in the sky, and then a basketball-sized meteorite hit her with precision like a missile. With a twist of my mind, that's all. Are you awake? It seems that the renovation was very successful. A crisp voice like a silver bell came from afar, speaking in a mournful tone. Leng Xiyue suddenly opened her eyes and saw a young girl in a black dress sitting on the ground not far away, leaning against the wall, looking listless. The girl has golden eyes, fair skin, long white hair scattered on the ground, and an unknown red gemstone on her forehead. Paired with her adorable doll face and slender body, Leng Xiyue was completely unable to raise her guard. Who are you? Leng Xiyue looked around for a moment. It was pitch black all around, and she couldn't see her fingers when she reached out. However, her figure was quite real, and she could be seen clearly from 10 meters away. The girl spread out her hand and said helplessly, "Me. It's just some unlucky guy who was accidentally shot out with that meteorite. You definitely don't want to know my real name, so just call me Xiao Bai. Leng Xiyue reached out and touched herself. Although she couldn't see it, she could still feel that her body had turned into a child of 5 or 6 years old. This situation is undoubtedly reincarnation, but I don't know the origin of the girl in front of me. As for the past life, her parents died unexpectedly when she was 8 years old. Her grandparents and grandparents also died long ago. They are all single-handed for a generation. There are no brothers and sisters. Naturally, there are no relatives to compete for the inheritance with the young woman. The inheritance and compensation of her parents and the older generation fall on her. Since then, she has lived alone and taken care of her own life every day after school. However, without the protection of her family, it was inevitable that she suffered from various forms of discrimination and bullying when she was in school. The wickedness of her human nature allowed her to grow much at a young age. In the end, she couldn't bear this kind of campus life. She, who used to love learning, couldn't concentrate in this environment. When she found out that she was still a group of elementary school classmates in junior high school, she simply dropped out and purchased various high-end gaming equipment, installed it in the 400 square meter mansion left by her parents, and then threw the remaining 5 million yuan into the bank. She could only survive on the interest income of 8,000 or 9,000 yuan per month. People's joys and sorrows are not interconnected, I just feel that they are noisy. After that, she became a dead end, living a completely dilapidated life, squatting at home playing games and watching TV dramas. Without friends, she had no real social life, and she didn't want to meet new friends online, let alone fall in love. After the initial pleasure, an inevitable sense of loneliness completely surrounded her. Even so, she didn't want to change anything in the past. She just passed the age of 16 in a daze, tired of all kinds of games, sitting on the sofa reading books every day to pass the time or daydreaming about life. But after much contemplation, she couldn't find any longing for the future. She felt like a canary in a luxurious birdcage, and death was at best a relief, with no regrets to speak of. Now that we can be reborn into a different world, we must enjoy it well. Okay, Xiao Bai, it seems that we will be partners in the future. The little white in front of her looks like a spiritual entity, perhaps the other person is the golden finger given to her by heaven. No matter what she represents or where she comes from, even if it's just an ordinary person who can accompany her to relieve her stress, Leng Xiyue is also very happy. Partner. Upon hearing this word, Xiao Bai suddenly froze and then smiled. Of course, we will become the best friends in the future. Xiao Bai has a very outgoing personality, but it seems like she hasn't spoken to anyone for a long time like Leng Xiyue. When two lonely souls collide, they naturally become friends at first sight. In this unfamiliar world, there is nothing more joyful than having a life and death friend. If there was a white soul hidden in the meteorite that killed her, wouldn't it be a life and death friendship? Leng Xiyue did not intend to inquire about the other party's background now. It is better to first understand the situation and stabilize it. After all, the day is long, and the matter of reincarnation will definitely be discussed by Xiao Bai. Alright, Xia, we don't have time to chat now. The top priority is for me to help you gather some spiritual energy to protect yourself. Spiritual energy. What is that? Leng Xiyue asked curiously. Spirituality is a special power bestowed upon our race by the Creator God, and only our star spirit race can fully control it. As for humans, even the human psychics of our time were 1 in a million. The human cub you are reborn with now naturally does not have that talent. Before Leng Xiyue could let go, Xiao Bai's voice changed and he said, "But who made you meet me? You and I have merged into one, so all you need to do is collect the special energy unique to this world, touch them, absorb them, and I can help you convert it into spiritual cultivation, replacing the energy that you should cultivate in this world. That is to say, you don't have to worry about your talent, just gather resources, really. That's really great." Hearing this, Leng Xiyue couldn't help but get excited. The boring cultivation for a modern person like Leng Xiyue is undoubtedly equivalent to torture. A person's life can do anything they want and can only do sitting meditation is not a concept. Although I was mentally prepared to work hard and find a cave to cultivate for 10 years before going out to explore after learning about my rebirth, I am still excited to learn that I have such a cultivation aid. As for resources, just find a way to make money and buy them. On second thought, Leng Xiyue calmed down again and said, "However, what world are we currently in? What if there is no special energy that meets your conversion criteria? Compared to using modern knowledge to become a comfortable landlord and wealthy person in ancient times, it is indeed more attractive to be a cultivator who goes to heaven and earth. Since spiritual power is used by the ethnic group of the novice, it must be quite impressive. Previously, she only wanted a corner of peace, now she only wants to go to heaven. But if this world doesn't have the special energy that Xiao Bai mentioned, she has no choice, so she doesn't dare to have too many expectations. In fact, before you wake up, the fusion between the system and this new body has already been completed. Your reincarnated body is very weak, as if scared to death by a wild beast. In this emergency situation, the program set by the system allows me to temporarily gain control of this body, so that I can counter-kill the beast before it whips its corpse, saving your life and killing you all the way to this relatively safe cave. System. Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue was quite surprised and asked, "Do we actually have a system? I thought we could only go on in the future as the two of us." Of course there is, otherwise you think you were killed by something. Xiao Bai chuckled and then reached out a little. A golden light ball suddenly appeared in front of Leng Xiyue. The light sphere you see, including myself, actually exists in your spiritual space and cannot have any impact on the outside. Others cannot see our existence, and my range of action is only about 10 meters around you. However, my senses are independent. After you become stronger in your spiritual power in the future, my range of activity can also expand accordingly. Spiritual space. Why can't I perceive it? Ningyu sensed it carefully, but found nothing. Because you are just an ordinary person now, only when I bring out its image can you see it. As she spoke, she pointed to the light sphere and said, as for this thing, it's our system. I'm not quite sure what its specific function is. It seems to be called the Starry Sky Core or something else. Anyway, it has been in a dormant state now, so we still need to obtain spiritual power first. No matter what the system of this world is, as long as the spiritual power is sufficient, it can definitely be activated. Leng Xiyue understood. If it weren't for Xiao Bai, she might need to explore for a while to activate this system. If this body's talent is poor, it's not impossible to live for 10 or 20 years. However, with Xiao Bai, the mystery of the inactive system will disappear. As long as you follow the steps to convert your spiritual abilities, it's good. Xiao Bai didn't dwell too much on this issue. He simply put away the light ball and pointed to the faint purple light in the distance, saying, "That's the energy I'm talking about." Although I'm not sure what the system of this world is, absorbing those colorful halos should help you obtain some self-protection spiritual energy, along with recovering your injuries. Looking in the direction she pointed, Leng Xiyue finally realized that there were many halos of white and yellow light in the cave, slightly illuminating the dim cave. Under these halos, there were also many corpses of wild beasts. Is this a soul ring? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Spiritualists. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Spiritualists. The setting of killing wild beasts and exploding halos was the first thing that Leng Xiyue thought of, which was the Douluo Continent. Such a distinctive feature is almost impossible to find in other worlds, but she doesn't know which era she is currently in. However, it was clearly not the time to contemplate these things at the moment. Watching the light of those soul rings gradually dim, Leng Xiyue suppressed the pain on her body, got up from the ground, and walked quickly over. Xiao Bai, how should I absorb these soul rings? Looking at this pile of soul rings that have been available for 10 to 1,000 years, Leng Xiyue felt a little scared. She is now just a child who doesn't even have a martial soul. Even the weakest 10-year soul ring can withstand her, right? Don't worry. Although the system has not been activated yet, it has already strengthened your spiritual space in your mind in advance, which is also my residence. Naturally, accommodating this energy is not a problem, so all you need to do is touch it and leave the rest to me. Xiao Bai patted his chest, feeling confident about this matter. After speaking, her figure disappeared without a trace. Xiao Bai. Seeing her little friend suddenly disappear, Leng Xiyue felt a little flustered. Don't worry, I've been there all along. I need to return to your spiritual space to complete the transformation process. Go and absorb it quickly. Upon hearing the familiar voice, Leng Xiyue finally felt relieved. For some reason, even though they had just met, it seemed like they had known each other for a long time and could trust each other without reservation. Without hesitation, Leng Xiyue directly found the purple soul ring among a pile of soul rings and reached out to touch it. At the moment of touching it, the soul ring was sucked into her body, but it seemed like a projection. When it came into contact with her body, it had no effect at all. Along with it came waves of warmth, gradually flowing through her body, very comfortable. Even the wounds on her body seemed to be less painful, and her body seemed to be slowly repaired. It seems that this is what she called spiritual power gradually taking effect. Continue, with this level of aura, you will need to absorb about 50 more to reach the maximum level that your body can currently improve. Due to certain rules set by this world for humans, you must go through certain things in order to continue to advance to a higher level. Let's speed up. I just accidentally killed it here because of bad luck. There are even higher level ones outside, so I think they should be enough for you to use. After listening to Xiao Bai's words, Leng Xiyue was taken aback for a moment. The purple soul rings she had just made were lighter in color, estimated to be around 1,000 years old. If there were 50 more soul rings like this, would it take 50,000 years to upgrade to level 10? With a cultivation of 50,000 years, it is difficult for an average soul emperor to resist. Such a high demand can only make her body, an ordinary person, saturated. She doesn't have a martial soul now, so will this level become her innate soul power level? Although I don't know if spiritual energy and soul power coexist or replace each other, and what the boundary between the two is, it's not the time for casual conversation right now, so I had to speed up and touch them all the way. Quickly, the soul rings in the cave were swept away, but except for the purple soul ring, the rest were all white and yellow soul rings, which together could last for at most 4,000 years. It doesn't feel much to talk too much, but at least the wounds on her body have healed quite well. Without the soul ring, there was no light left in the cave. Leng Xiyue was about to touch the wall and walk slowly when Xiao Bai's figure appeared again, holding her hand and walking ahead. Follow me. Perhaps because the other person lives in their own spiritual space, Leng Xiyue can touch her, which is a wonderful feeling, as if the other person seems to be speaking, but in fact, it is directly feedback to her mind, and she only needs to respond with consciousness. Perhaps Xiao Bai's existence is a bit like Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk. But it's not very appropriate. Xiao Bai clearly has her own soul body and independent senses. She also has some soul grandfathers like Yao Lao, but she can't leave her body around her. Perhaps it's a wonderful form between the two. With a guide, Leng Xiyue quickly arrived at the exit of the cave and walked out under the dazzling sunlight. Suddenly walking from darkness to bright sunlight, Leng Xiyue couldn't help but close her eyes, adapt for a moment, and after a while, she finally opened her eyes. Looking at the silver-clad and magnificent forest scenery in the distance, and also seeing the hundreds of meters of ravines crisscrossing in front of the mountain entrance, resembling wasteland, Leng Xiyue was stunned. On the wasteland, a large yellow and white soul ring floats in the air, among which is a dark black soul ring. Except for the soul ring, there are no corpses of soul beasts on the ground, and the big trees on this land have long been extinguished. Only the black particles on the ground that have not yet been blown away by the wind can barely reveal their traces of existence. Are you the one who did this, little white? Leng Xiyue was shocked. Is this the commotion that was made to save her life? Xiao Bai looked at the wasteland in front of him and helplessly spread out his hand, saying, I have no choice but to control my residual strength in your body. After the spiritual energy leaked out, the movement was indeed a bit loud. But based on my speculation, there should be many people in this world who can reach this level, so it shouldn't attract too much attention, right? However, compared to this, you should be more worried about why there is a high-level beast that should not appear here specifically to kill the original owner of your body. Most of the low-level beasts around are affected, and on such a cold day, they don't have much desire to fight. If not, I don't need to take action. Indeed, although I don't know where this forest is, it appears to be just the periphery, filled with soul beasts that have been around for 10 or 100 years. Those who can live in the cave behind them are considered experts in this area, and their highest strength is only over 1,000 years old. It is strange for a soul beast that has been around for 10,000 years to appear here. The color of that black soul ring is not light, estimated to be around 20,000 to 30,000 years, which is even more unbelievable. Unfortunately, the original owner did not leave any memory, and it is estimated that they will have to rely on themselves to find the answer to all these strange things. As she walked towards the black soul ring, Leng Xiyue asked, speaking of which, why can't I feel the cold? Is this spiritual power? The sharp cold wind occasionally blew by, and one could feel fear just by listening to the sound. However, when it blew on Leng Xiyue, it was just like a spring breeze brushing her face, which made her feel very magical. Well, improving one's physical fitness with psychic abilities is just the most basic thing. Even powerful psychics can cross the void without any problem. Once we understand the world's rule system, we can further utilize it. Seeing that Leng Xiyue still had doubts on her face, Xiaobai continued to explain, although I look like a human, this is just a personification. Due to the racial barrier, we are completely different from humans in the use of spiritual energy. Human bodies are too weak, and teaching you to use my skills will actually harm you. You can only use the methods of human manipulation in this world to utilize psychic power, or see if that system can provide you with any special help. I see. Leng Xiyue understood. Upon hearing Xiaobai's words, spiritual energy should exist as a substitute for soul power. In other words, to learn skills or achieve level breakthroughs, soul rings are still needed. However, the quality of spiritual energy is much stronger than that of soul power. Similarly, her soul skills will also use spiritual power, which will naturally greatly increase in power. Leng Xiyue told Xiaobai everything she knew, and Xiaobai roughly understood the workings of the world. As they chatted, the two quickly arrived in front of the 10,000-year soul ring, and Xiaobai returned to his spiritual space. Let's get started. Once reborn and twice ripe, Leng Xiyue didn't hesitate to touch it. Just like before, in almost an instant, this black soul ring was absorbed into her body. The previously wonderful feeling reappeared, and Leng Xiyue didn't neglect it. She continued to absorb other soul rings. With the continuous enhancement of spiritual energy, the most intuitive feeling is the improvement of strength and physical fitness. Originally, this body was extremely weak even without injuries, making it difficult to walk 2 steps. Now, she can be said to be walking briskly and quickly absorbing all the soul rings. These soul rings are quite numerous, with dozens or even hundreds of them dating back 100 years, ranging from 100 to 700 or 800 years. It is estimated that the homes hidden underground during their winter hibernation were directly lifted. Alright, my work here will continue for 1 or 2 minutes. First, explore around and use your current strength to use the small knife on your body to deal with soul beasts under 200 years old without any problem. That knife is quite sharp, so self-defense is definitely enough. Okay. Leng Xiyue also felt that this place was not suitable for staying for a long time, so she found a direction and slowly touched it. Although I don't know why the original owner came here, as long as you find the direction outside or encounter other humans who are hunting soul rings, you should be able to go out. Thinking of this, Leng Xiyue took out the dagger on her body. At the sight of sunlight, a cold gleam flashed on the blade of this dagger, making it incredibly sharp and easy to grip. A purple gemstone was embedded in the center of the dagger, which looked quite superfluous but did not affect the feel of use. A dragon-shaped pattern wrapped around the handle looks majestic and extraordinary, but I don't know what it represents. Perhaps it is a symbol of power and status. The appearance of this knife on her body was not accidental. The clothes she was wearing were dirty, but it was also evident from the material that they were quite precious. Perhaps her original identity was a wealthy and troubled child. No wonder the novice said that the original owner was being targeted. It's strange not to be targeted with such a treasure. Although I don't know the grade, no matter how I think it is a weapon used at the level of Soul Emperor and Soul King. It is just such a dagger. Why can it attract experts who can drive away soul beasts for thousands of years? She doesn't believe that the appearance of these 1,000-year soul beasts is just a coincidence. Just as Leng Xiyue was pondering how to uncover the secret, a violent noise suddenly came from several hundred meters away. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Encountering Hulena by chance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Encountering Hulena by chance. A few hundred meters away, 2 teenagers around the age of 10 are running rapidly, with 5 people of similar ages following closely behind, getting closer and closer. The young man gritted his teeth as he gazed at the figure chasing him relentlessly, and then stopped in his tracks. "Sister, I'll hold them down, you run." Upon hearing this, the girl quickly stopped and looked anxious. "What stupid words are you talking about? You'll die here. When I was fighting with them just now, I got injured and can't run away anymore," the young man said with a bitter smile. "So, as long as you can get out alive, even if I didn't die in vain." As he spoke, the young man approached the pursuers and raised a soul ring, shouting loudly, "First soul skill, slay." Looking at this scene that could be considered a death sentence, the girl's eyes were filled with tears. At this moment, she only blamed herself for being too weak. The next second, her gaze became firm, summoning her own martial soul. A fox tail appeared behind her, and a pair of fox ears were added to her head. The 5 pursuers saw the situation and looked at the magnificent blade, not surprised but happy. A soul master dressed in turtle shells took the initiative to greet him, and the blade struck him, only flying him away, leaving a mark on the turtle shell. However, the huge force clearly caused some internal injuries, and the turtle shell soul master quickly sat aside and began to regulate his breath. The other 4 people, upon seeing this, also activated their martial souls and rushed forward. The young man had the intention to resist, but he did not have the strength to defeat the 4 and was quickly pinned to the ground. The leader walked up to him and couldn't help but laugh. "Evil Moon, I finally caught you. I have to admit, you are very strong. You killed both of us in one face, but what's the use of it? Even though our soul power is 1 or 2 levels lower than yours, everyone is useful. Unlike you, you have to protect your useless sister who has little combat power." Xiyue looked at her detestable face and said harshly, "No, she's not a waste. It's just that she hasn't undergone any specific cultivation yet. In time, you trash combined won't be enough for her to fight." The person shrugged his shoulders and remained non-committal. Perhaps, with her beauty, the ability to charm may not be able to be resisted by many people when she grows up, provided that she can survive and leave, he said as he spoke. He crouched down, grabbed the head of Evil Moon, and pointed to the girl who was only 10 steps away. "Look, your sister obviously doesn't cherish the opportunity. So, I'll have to let you all go together." Just as he was about to take action, another person's voice suddenly came from not far away. "Really, then you guys need to put in more effort." "Who?" The 4 of them were suddenly startled and followed the sound, only to find that their teammate, who was originally hiding under the shade of a tree to breathe, had already been wiped off their necks and struggling to fall to the ground. The person who came here was Leng Xiyue. Although she didn't want to get involved in these things, it was rare to encounter someone else. To understand the current situation, it's not enough not to get involved. The side with a large number of people is difficult to communicate with at first glance. On the contrary, it is the brother and sister who have been chased. The young man looks upright, and the young girl is also pitiful. Understanding the situation from them is undoubtedly the best choice. In addition to enhancing physical fitness, spiritual energy can also cover up some of the breath. After receiving recognition from Xiaobai, she dared to approach quietly and directly kill the rough and thick defense soul master with the sharpness of the dagger. Now, with 3 strikes and 4, there shouldn't be too much problem, right? "Are you not a soul master? How could that be?" The leader looked at Leng Xiyue, who didn't even have a soul ring, and was greatly shocked. If the higher level soul-slaying master could be attributed to that extraordinary-looking dagger, then how did she approach unnoticed quietly? They have survived until now because they crawled out of the sea of corpses and blood. If they didn't even have this alertness, they would probably have died long ago. "You go take care of her." With the addition of Leng Xiyue, the situation became uncontrollable. The leader gave a stern look, gesturing for a subordinate to go and deal with Leng Xiyue, while he was possessed by a martial soul and prepared to deal with Evil Moon first. Although it's an evil sect, that little girl is not a soul master after all. As long as you first kill the powerful character Evil Moon, then their advantage still lies on their side. Leng Xiyue is also aware of this. Her spiritual power has been fully enhanced, but she ultimately lacks combat ability and can only strengthen herself. Close combat may not necessarily have an advantage. If there is a ranged type of martial soul on the opposite side, it will definitely be given in vain. At this thought, she didn't hesitate at all and threw the tip of the dagger in her hand upwards, aiming in the direction of the leader. Keep going. The soul master who came to catch Cold Xiyue knew that the dagger was extremely sharp and could only dodge it. The leader also knew that this thing was not easy, so he gave his subordinates a look and signaled them to take action, while he turned around and concentrated his soul power to catch the dagger thrown at him. At this moment, the girl who was looked down upon by them moved and quickly rushed towards this side. The yellow soul ring behind her lit up and said, "First soul skill, charm." Then, a pink light flew towards the leader. The charm skills depend on the user's charm and the opponent's mentality. If they already have a certain liking for them, the charm effect will also be enhanced. Conversely, if they are not close to women or do not have much liking, the effect will be extremely low. Unfortunately, a 10-year-old girl clearly lacks any charm, and she doesn't know how long she has been here. She is dirty all over and has no attraction at all. However, this is ultimately a mental attack, and even if it is weak, it can still cause a few seconds of confusion. The leader's attention was focused on the flying dagger, without even paying attention to the attack behind him. One mistake was to be hit and freeze in place. The other two quickly took out their sword-shaped martial souls and thrust them towards the heart of Evil Moon, while the other tightly held him down. At the critical moment of life and death, Evil Moon's soul power suddenly erupted. One struggled to avoid a fatal injury, but her left shoulder was pierced. The girl also rushed over. Although her combat power was somewhat poor, her soul power was higher than those few people. With this weak advantage, she pounced and fought with the person who held Evil Moon. "Brother, hurry up." Everything happened between lightning, fire, and stones. Evil Moon understood that the outcome at this moment was determined by the dagger. As long as she received it, it was not a problem to kill others with this high-level equipment. So she resisted the attack of another person and quickly picked up the dagger that had fallen to the ground. In a situation where the strength is almost the same, a Soul Master has obtained a weapon with the level of Soul King and Soul Emperor, and the outcome is naturally determined in an instant. Although the level of the Moon Blade Soul of Evil Moon is strong, the remaining few people, even if weak, will not be much inferior and will be restrained by the defense-type Soul Master, making it impossible to achieve crushing. But now it's different. This dagger is undoubtedly a divine artifact in battles at this level. Slaying them is like cutting melons and vegetables. The leader had just come back to his senses under the influence of temptation to gather his soul power and prepare to resist, but was attacked by the Demon Moon's one-blade owl. At this moment, the artifact is in hand, and even if seriously injured, it has the power of a battle. The other two dare not resist and turn around to run. But the girl still clung tightly to the person she was clinging to, no matter how painful it was, she couldn't let go. As the Evil Moon approached, the person was completely flustered. Let go quickly." Xiyue naturally showed no mercy and quickly stepped forward to deal with it with a single blow. Then, her soul power gathered in her palm and she aimed at another person who was running away, throwing her dagger fiercely. With a burst of piercing sounds, the person let out a scream, and then reluctantly fell down. It's quite complicated to say, but in fact, the entire process was only a few tens of seconds. The Soul Master who was assigned to kill Cold Xiyue had not yet waited to take action. When he turned around, he found that his teammates were all dead. He was completely disoriented and ran away. Leng Xiyue was also gambling that the two of them had a chance to fight back. If they couldn't run away, it would be a good thing to lose the dagger that could cause harm to the original owner. He didn't feel any pain at all. Watching the person leave, Evil Moon didn't pursue him either. She just pulled out the dagger from the body and couldn't hold it anymore, falling to the ground. Brother. The girl had just been beaten a few times and also suffered some injuries. Seeing the appearance of Xiyue, she disregarded her own pain and helped him to one side of the big stone, leaning against it to rest for a while. I'm fine, I can't die yet. You go see if our benefactor is injured, and also, return this dagger to her. Xiyue took out some herbs from the storage bag in her waist and applied them to the wound, suppressing the pain. It's not wrong to say they were life-saving benefactors. If it weren't for her sudden help, they might have died. How are you doing? Leng Xiyue walked over and took the knife handed over by the girl, asking with concern. It's okay, don't worry about the serious injury, but we've also taken some medicine recently. It's okay to stop bleeding or something. Xiyue's face improved a bit at this moment, and she picked up her sister's hand and introduced her to Leng Xiyue. My name is Xiyue, and this is my sister Hulena. Thank you very much for sacrificing your life to help. If there's a chance in the future, we will definitely repay you. Upon hearing this, Hulena smiled sweetly, as charming as a neighboring girl. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. A Beautiful New World. No, it's not beautiful. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. A Beautiful New World. No, it's not beautiful. A child who doesn't even have a martial soul dares to get involved in the affairs of a group of soul masters. To put it bluntly, it's bold, but to put it bluntly, it's pure seeking death. Anyway, since they helped each other, this kindness is worth remembering for a long time. Hello, my name is Leng Xiyue. Leng Xiyue looked at Hulena, who looked like a younger sister next door. It was probably the older sister next door, and she felt a bit puzzled. Judging from their ages, they were probably only around 10 years old, but wouldn't they be the golden generation of the martial soul hall in the future? How could one live such a miserable life at this age? Just as Leng Xiyue was pondering how to ask, Hulena spoke up and asked, Sister, why are you here? It seems like you don't even have a martial soul, do you? Well, to be honest with you, I actually have amnesia. I woke up not long ago and only remembered things about this world, but I don't remember why I appeared here. The two people in front of me were both honest and trustworthy, so what she said was the truth. I see. Leng Xiyue thought the two of them wouldn't believe this statement, but to her surprise, they just nodded solemnly and looked serious. Upon seeing this, Leng Xiyue asked in reverse, Nana, may I ask where this is? And why are you being chased by those people? This is the martial soul forest. Hulena's body suddenly trembled. We are currently undergoing a trial, or rather a promotion match. Our group of wandering children consists of about 500 people, carefully selected from various sub-halls. The Martial Soul Hall allows us to undergo an unrestricted survival test in this forest. They will give us a small device to detect vital signs at the beginning, and it will only send us an end signal when there are only 100 people left in the end. There are no rules in this trial, or in other words, the only rule is to survive. They only want these 100 strong individuals who can survive. These 500 people were originally very talented, carefully selected from various places. The ones who survived were extremely talented in cultivation, combat skills, and survival experience, and were definitely among the elite. As they spoke, a glimmer of hope flashed in both Hulena and Xiyue's eyes. If we could become one of these 100 spots, the future would be bright. Although the possibility of entering the core of the Martial Soul Hall is very small, it is likely that we could only become ordinary guards assigned to do some dirty and tiring work, but that kind of life is hundreds of times better than when we were wandering. After hearing these words, Leng Xiyue roughly understood. According to their description, isn't this just raising goo? Simple, but useful and efficient. I heard that the Martial Soul Hall treats ordinary people very well, isn't it? Besides, you are a soul master with good talent. Why do you have to go through this kind of thing? Leng Xiyue asked curiously. As soon as these words were spoken, both Xiyue and Hulena looked at her with a foolish gaze, but quickly restrained and explained helplessly. Silly little sister, the prerequisite for treating ordinary people well is to be an ordinary person. When we wandered back then, we were just as big as you. Whether in the eyes of the small kingdom or the two empires, it was a useless tumor. Being killed by high-ranking officials and nobles on the street was not a concern, and there were countless people who were arrested and enslaved. The meaningless wars between kingdoms, a large number of bandits, and the domineering aristocrats changed the fate of countless families every year, just like our parents who were killed by robbers on their way to business. Their originally friendly friends will also instantly turn into greedy evil spirits. Those officials can seize our property for any reason, regardless of our life or death, and ultimately can only wander around. If it weren't for the martial soul hall saving us, giving us a bite to eat, and activating our martial soul at the age of 6, and then teaching us how to cultivate and helping us obtain the first soul ring, how would we have had the chance to participate in this hopeful trial? We might have starved to death on the streets long ago, or been captured by some slave traders, living a life more than death. From the moment we were adopted by them, we had already determined that our lives belonged to the martial soul hall. The martial soul hall needed such cruel training to cultivate our bloodiness and firm fighting spirit, and to learn killing skills instead of relying on our own family or parents' power to receive good resources like those lucky children born in the martial soul city. Only those who survived can enjoy the same treatment as normal people. In fact, the martial soul hall did not force us to undergo this trial. They were happy to let us go back outside, but no one wanted to return to that hellish world. So it's like this. For some reason, Leng Xiyue, who had just killed someone without much controversy, felt a bit complicated at the moment. In her impression, Douluo Continent was a quite prosperous world, but the darkness hidden behind the prosperity was probably unimaginable. For example, in the plot, the Tiando Empire repeatedly prohibited the slave trade industry chain, and the dignified population buying and selling. These dark things she instinctively forgot. Now that she heard Hulena's words, she remembered them. How good is the martial soul hall that can be used for this kind of gu cultivation test? Despite facing such hardships, Hulena and Xiyue still narrowly escaped death. Obviously, they were very grateful to the martial soul hall and did not feel that this cruelty was wrong. It seemed that they had already believed that survival of the fittest was correct. Leng Xiyue didn't quite understand what kind of darkness it was that made these wandering children would rather die here than go back. Seeing Leng Xiyue's low mood, Xiaobai leaned against the tree and said helplessly, "Alas, I can only start to erase the side effects of things I have experienced for you, so that you won't feel uncomfortable due to certain small things, such as the aftermath of the first murder, which will make your mind firm and keep you calm and decisive at all times. But I have never lived in human society, so naturally I cannot understand the causes of all of this, nor can I comfort you with my experience. If I tell you about the structure of our star spirit society, you will definitely not be able to understand it. No matter what, I will always be by your side. If you are dissatisfied with this world, then we will go and change it. Believe me, we definitely have this ability." "Well, thank you, Xiaobai." After hearing these words, Leng Xiyue's face also smiled. Yes, she is not alone. Since she has already arrived in this world, if she is dissatisfied with something and knows why such a situation arises, why not try to change it? If you can't even act recklessly in your lifetime, isn't it a waste of life? Alright, it's time to get down to business. If you want to activate the system, I feel like you can start with both of them. Yes, I think so too. After replying to a casual conversation, Leng Xiyue looked at Hulena with a passionate expression in her eyes. "Nana, I don't know you. Can you help me awaken my martial soul?" The matter of opening a martial soul is not complicated. Regardless of the level of soul master, they can open a martial soul for others. They only need to use their own soul power to guide the opponent's martial soul inside and activate their innate soul power. Well, although I haven't driven it for anyone else, should I be able to? Although Hulena and Xiyue are only first-level soul masters, they also have soul power of level 18 or 19, which is just a little short of the second level. It is natural to complete the task of opening a martial soul. Hulena walked up to Leng Xiyue, possessed by a demon fox martial soul. She then took Leng Xiyue's hand and whispered, "Relax, I will transfer my soul power into your body until your martial soul is activated." Everyone activates their martial soul at different points. If there is an awakening stone, it is much more convenient. You can directly locate the location of the martial soul for activation. If activated in a way similar to spreading fire, you can only search for it bit by bit. Leng Xiyue felt a stream of heat flowing into her body through her palm, slowly swimming around her like a massage, which was quite comfortable. This process is very labor-intensive and inefficient. In no time, Hulena's forehead was covered in sweat beads, but cold Xiyue showed no signs of activating her martial soul. The little white on the side couldn't bear to watch anymore and reminded angrily, "Fool, you ask her to sweep this power around your head, maybe you can activate the system. Isn't something going wrong here?" Leng Xiyue hesitated a bit and scanned her head. If something went wrong, it wasn't just for fun. "What are you afraid of when I'm here? Just let her scan it." Xiao Bai had said so, and Leng Xiyue no longer hesitated. She said to Hulena, "Sister, I seem to feel my martial soul. It should be near my head. Do you think you can scan here?" "I understand." Hulena nodded and then guided her soul power towards Leng Xiyue's head. This process can be quite dangerous, as even a slight mistake can turn Leng Xiyue into a fool. There's no way, the most primitive way to activate martial souls is like this, who made them lack device support. Hulena's movements were particularly careful, and Xiao Bai also entered the soul space to guide. In no time, Leng Xiyue felt something like a barrier in her mind suddenly shatter, and she suddenly felt the presence of the golden light ball clearly. The soul power injected by Hulena was originally as cautious as a trickle, but now it suddenly surged like a rushing river towards the light ball. Cold Xiyue's eyes suddenly blurred, her whole body seemed to soar, her body became light and floating, and her consciousness was sucked into the sphere of light. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. System Space and Forging Furnace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 System Space and Forging Furnace, Detected Energy from Another World, System Activation in Progress, Getting the Coordinates of the Planet. Failed. Loading Local Power System and Culture. Completed. Allocating existing resources and setting corresponding task systems to complete. Detected the host's energy system. Psionic. Loading initial armor and growth path that matched the host race. Done. Basic forging furnace activation completed. The basic scan has been completed, and your initial armor has been set as an existence in this world called martial soul. The initial strength is iron, and you have obtained the basic spiritual output component. After the host obtains enough advanced metal, they can use the forging furnace to upgrade its strength. At the same time, for each soul ring you acquire, you can independently design a skill that can be implemented based on the existing components. The power output of the skill's spiritual power is linked to the age limit of the soul ring you absorb. Activate beginner task. Reach level 10 of psychic power. Task reward. Speed component. Accompanied by an ethereal sound, Leng Xiyue's consciousness quickly recovered. Before she could digest those words, a huge city appeared before her eyes. It's not appropriate to say that every detail of this city can be clearly perceived by her, as if she has a divine perspective. This city looks quite classical, with an architectural style that leans towards the west, and contains many gardens, including forests, lakes, small bridges, and flowing water. At this moment, the city continues to extend outward, with all kinds of beautiful scenery readily available in the city, making it a paradise in dreams. In the center of the city stands a huge white palace in the shape of a pyramid. The entire palace is made of unknown metal, and a huge blue crystal rotates at the top of the palace, looking very much like a relic of an alien civilization. Leng Xiyue scanned it to death, only to find a transparent barrier separating it from the soul space outside, perhaps the original space of the system. Just as Leng Xiyue was curiously looking around, Xiao Bai's figure suddenly appeared and took her hand, saying, "Welcome to your spiritual space." "Is this my soul space?" Leng Xiyue was shocked. She didn't understand the concept of spiritual space. For example, the spiritual sea that Tianmeng created for Huiyuhao was almost the same concept. However, she felt like a vacation destination, and even though she had some guesses, she couldn't help but get excited when she learned this fact from childhood. "Well, what you see now are all the light spheres that have been transformed based on the culture of the planet we are currently on, expanding your soul space. For your consciousness or soul like me, living here is indeed a pleasure. As for the city you see, I don't know what its design purpose is or why it is designed in this style, but it's not just for your enjoyment. But it's really stingy. In order to train you, the beginner set I gave you is just this useless thing, and I don't even want to take out any crystal ore." Xiao Bai glanced at the armor on Leng Xiyue's body, and a look of disgust appeared on his face. Leng Xiyue followed her gaze and then noticed that she had an extra set of pure white armor on her body. She raised her hand and carefully examined it, feeling very satisfied. "I think it's pretty good, right? It is said to be armor, but in fact, this equipment does not wrap around the whole body like ordinary armor. It is a clean white dress with many blue gemstones. This blue and white tone looks very comfortable, and the whole body is made of some lightweight metal. Wearing it is neither uncomfortable nor heavy, it can be said to be quite considerate. Perhaps for the convenience of combat, or simply for the sake of better appearance, a lot of materials have been reduced, resulting in many parts lacking any protection. Therefore, the overall appearance is not very defensive, but extremely beautiful. Overall, it looks simple and efficient, but not frivolous, which is in line with the wishes of Leng Xiyue. As for girls, it doesn't matter whether they are strong or not. Good looks come first. In addition, there is a strange golden emblem on her forehead, with a sapphire-like light spot in the middle, emitting a deep blue glow. I think this is the soul seal." Xiao Bai looked at Leng Xiyue as if she had found a treasure, feeling somewhat helpless. However, she explained, "After equipping yourself with armor or a martial soul possession, your basic attributes such as strength and speed will be greatly improved. You can also use the devices on your wrist to condense your spiritual energy into weapons or shields, or use them to replenish energy for others. This is also the most basic way of use." "Is it like this?" Cold Xiye's heart twitched, and a long sword flickering with golden light appeared in her hand. "Yes, currently you can only use this type of melee weapon that condenses psychic energy to attack, and you can also determine its damage attribute based on its form, whether it is sharp or blunt. However, it should be noted that as the level of psychic energy and equipment output power increase, you can make the transformed weapon longer and larger, but you cannot make it detach and launch it like a ranged weapon. If you want to unleash powerful spells or long-range attacks, you need to obtain higher level output components. Your current martial soul is already an infinitely castrated version, so the system will reward you with those components in the future, which can be considered a way to cultivate you. After gathering them all, this armor set will be very powerful. At the same time, the weapons you condense now cannot completely ignore defense like the laser weapons in your impression. The spiritual power directly drawn from the void is completely different from the spiritual power extracted from local resources. Before extracting the energy from the void to upgrade yourself, the weapons you condense can still be blocked and hindered by armor or body energy, just like energy attacks like wind blades. It's similar. You can also collect some powerful weapons and attach them with spiritual energy to enhance them. Although Xiaobai's words are all about how useless the armor is, and how limited the use of spiritual energy is nowadays, Leng Xiyue is having a lot of fun playing with it. She gathers a hammer, a machete, and a whip, which is more like an extension of her body. No matter what kind of weapon is condensed, it is just like arm commands. Of course, when used, it is also disorganized. Basically, it's just a random move. In the eyes of a novice, this thing is certainly very troublesome, but don't forget that the quality of spiritual energy itself is much higher than soul power. After all, it takes 50,000 years for a soul ring to condense 10 levels of spiritual energy. So, the quality of spiritual weapons should also be able to defeat a lot of high-level martial souls, right? That's enough. What other remote attack methods are needed? Handsome, that's it. Speaking of which, Xiaobai, what's inside that building? Leng Xiyue pointed to the building in the middle with a completely different art style and asked curiously. That is the location of the system's main body. Inside the barrier is an independent space where devices related to system functions will be stored, such as the forge I just obtained and my residence before meeting you. The remaining areas, such as the warehouse, I don't have enough permissions to access, and I don't know what's going on. After all, I am just a soul body bound together, no different from a prisoner. But I think there should also be many good things. If you want to use the function of a forging furnace, you can directly operate it here or in reality, said Xiaobai after stuttering and introducing a few sentences. Although Leng Xiyue is curious, she is not ungrateful. Since it is a space built that IN to the system, rewards and other things are probably placed inside. There are many alien black technologies, which can be considered as giving her a basic understanding of the system's strength. Knowing this is enough. As long as we follow the rules of the system, everything inside will eventually be hers. If we try to take shortcuts, we will probably be abandoned by the system. She doesn't believe that higher civilization races are foolish and have no plans in this regard. With this in mind, Leng Xiyue asked another question. What is that forging furnace? The so-called forging furnace, you can understand it as a laboratory, with two functions in total. One is to help you complete scientific research, supplement a certain product in your cognition, and restore detailed design drawings of things in your mind that have certain concepts and precedents, are familiar with various usage processes and application methods, but are not familiar with specific components. It can be used as knowledge to enter your mind, or to supplement semi-finished products with certain research results, making them perfect the result you need. It should be noted that you cannot use this to achieve things that do not exist, only exist in fantasy, or only know the general function and theoretical effects, but have no knowledge of the basic system, such as nuclear weapons in your world. You cannot simply know that nuclear bombs are powerful, and can produce mushroom clouds. This more complex product must have some research on triggering methods and the energy inside in order to supplement and reproduce it. You also need to be a graduate student in related fields. It is easy to restore simple products, such as cars. If you know the general structure and driving method, as well as the energy used, the forging furnace will automatically supplement the components inside. Even if the final result is slightly different, the function must be the same. Another function is to implement these ideas. The forging furnace comes with a relatively small fully automatic production line, and materials can be directly transported in through external storage devices, which can automatically manufacture things with design drawings. After collecting enough materials, the enhancement of the martial soul also needs to be done through the forging furnace. As for the development of design drawings, as long as you are in the soul space, you can always contact the forging furnace and carry out research and development, and the system has a complete function of transmitting ideas. Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue roughly understood that it is a very practical function. It will not realize your unrealistic fantasies, but can replicate your knowledge range, common modern things, and leave a deep impression. Unless these unrealistic fantasies have blueprints as a solid theoretical foundation. Now it seems that such a function is not very useful, but soon, Leng Xiyue smiled and thought of how to use this function. Seeing that Leng Xiyue seemed to have entered some kind of imagination about the future, her saliva was about to leave behind, and Xiaobai also chuckled lightly. Anyway, having ideals is always a good thing, right? Seemingly sensing something, Xiaobai interrupted Leng Xiyue's daydream and said, by the way, this system doesn't seem to be very smart. The first task it releases can now be directly awarded, but I advise you to wait and claim it again. It's best to first help the little sister outside restore her soul power. Her small amount of soul power has already been drained by the forge. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Armor of the Divine Clan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Armor of the Divine Clan. What? Why didn't you say it earlier? Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue quickly left her soul space, her consciousness flickered, and she returned to reality. Nana, how are you? Hulena had already fainted due to excessive overdraft, her face extremely pale. The evil moon beside her was anxious and wanted to struggle to check the situation, but couldn't get up because of the heavy injury on her body. Instead, she grinned in pain. Don't worry, Brother Xiyue. Nana Jie should just be overdrawn, I'll supplement her. Leng Xiyue quickly approached, her mind moved, and her martial soul instantly possessed her. In reality, the armor used as a martial soul is exactly the same as what she tried in the soul space, and the operation is not complicated, as if she was born with it. Perhaps this is the benefit of being a martial soul. After grabbing Hulena's hand, she followed Xiaobai's instructions to transmit her spiritual energy. Soon, Hulena's face turned red again. Seeing this, Xiaoyu also breathed a sigh of relief. She then looked at the pure white armor on Leng Xiyue's body and couldn't help but be surprised. Sister, is this your martial soul? Armored martial souls in this form are not uncommon in Douluo Continent, but generally do not have much growth potential, and their level is not much better than hoes, sickles, and the like. The armor on Leng Xiyue's body looks a bit too beautiful. Although the clothes she was wearing originally looked extraordinary in texture, they were also full of mud and couldn't see their original appearance. At most, she was a wandering child from a wealthy family. At this moment, she was like a deity descending to the mortal world, and her dirty face and skin seemed to have been washed, incredibly fair. Even if it's not about aesthetics, armor that can be directly attached can transfer one's soul power directly to others. Even if it's only this ability, being an auxiliary soul master to charge other battles, soul masters can still do well. Yes, now that you are injured like this, it seems that I need to protect you during this time. As she spoke, Leng Xiyue raised her hand and a short blade made of spiritual energy gathered appeared behind her wrist. According to Xiaobai, activating weapons like this seems to be more suitable for combat. Tens of thousands of years ago, Star Spirit used such a double-edged weapon. From basic infantry to leaders, they all like to use the double-edged weapon. However, Leng Xiyue didn't agree with this. She is not a Star Spirit, and if you really want to fight, you will definitely use a long sword. Not only is it useful, but it is also handsome. Thinking of this, Leng Xiyue's mind moved and her two blades disappeared. Then she extended her hands and made a sword-pulling gesture, and a spiritual long sword appeared in her hand. The evil moon on the side looked dumbfounded at the shining golden sword. At the age of only 11, he couldn't understand this scene. Isn't her martial soul armor? How could he still draw his sword out of thin air? A typical weapon soul does not actually give people too much pressure when it is not infused with soul power, such as his own moon blade. It is said that it is already quite good among weapon souls. Although there is still a gap compared to top-level weapon souls like the Haotian hammer, it is considered outstanding among advanced weapon souls. The spiritual long sword in front of me had a terrifying feeling, as if my body was not worth mentioning in front of this lightsaber, even though he was almost level 20 and the little girl in front of me had just activated her martial soul. Thinking of this, Xiyue suddenly realized something, her face changed suddenly, and she excitedly said, "Sister, are you born with full soul power? Shouldn't it be?" Leng Xiyue put away her lightsaber and scratched her head. To be honest, the original owner of this body may have some talent and also has its own martial soul. However, after being taken by her, these talents naturally disappeared. Previously, she had absorbed spiritual power of level 10, which was probably similar to the effect of Tang San's cultivation of Xiantian Gong. The cultivation she had already obtained looked no different from her innate soul power after activating her martial soul. Xiantian full soul power is actually Xiantian full soul power, Xiyue murmured to herself for a moment before realizing something. She quickly said, "Sister Xiyue, if you are Xiantian full soul power, you must join the Martial Soul Hall. Only in the Martial Soul Hall can you get the best development space. I know your identity is definitely not simple, otherwise you wouldn't have appeared in the Martial Soul Forest out of thin air. But it's also true that if you want to recall past events through the tokens left on your body, the Martial Soul Palace is also your best opportunity." Xiyue's words can be said to be very sincere, and Leng Xiyue was also a bit tempted. It was obvious that there must be someone secretly trying to harm her. If they could hold on to the thigh of the Martial Soul Hall, then what the group wanted to do would have to be carefully considered. Moreover, Wuhuan City is also the best platform for making money. In the busiest city on this continent, whether it is using forging furnaces to sell something or buying high-level resources and minerals, it is the best choice. As for whether or not to help Tang San in the Martial Soul Hall, she has no idea at the moment. After all, opposing Tang San, the protagonist, is an extremely troublesome matter. She, who has a loose nature and only wants to fish, is not prepared for this. Let's get to know the Martial Soul Hall more carefully before we discuss it. With the idea of taking a stroll around the Martial Soul City first, Leng Xiyue nodded and said, I will seriously consider it. Thank you, Brother Xiyue. Xiyue looked up at the sky, and it was already dusk. He reminded him, it's getting late. If you want to go to the Martial Soul City, just keep walking along this direction. This place is also relatively hidden. We should be safe to hide here, and our trial will continue. The two of them have experienced various harsh environments since childhood and are almost level 20 soul masters. It is not difficult to resist this harsh cold. It should be safer to hide here and slowly recover after nightfall, and self-protection should not be a problem. On the contrary, if Leng Xiyue were here, it would undoubtedly become a burden. Although her martial soul looks very strong, she is ultimately just a soul warrior without soul skills. Although the Martial Soul Hall did not set any rules for this trial, it is definitely not allowed to seek external assistance. Otherwise, if someone knew the Soul Master and Soul Sect to help, wouldn't they just go to heaven? Xiyue also didn't want her, a free person, to get involved in their trial. At this moment of separation, it was the best for both Leng Xiyue and the two of them. Of course, Leng Xiyue was not at ease. Just as she was about to say something, the little white beside her spoke up and reminded, "Don't worry, these high-quality goo insects are very precious. There is someone taking care of them in the dark. Even if you didn't come before, they would definitely not die. You thought this was a fair elimination match, but in fact, the person who could ultimately survive was probably already predetermined. This so-called trial is probably just a training session for these high-quality insects. As long as their talent is high enough, how can they be abandoned? Rather than worrying about them, you should still worry about yourself. I estimate that person has already sent back the message that you may be the so-called innate soul power. If you don't leave, you probably won't be able to leave." Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue suddenly understood how people like Hulena and Xiyue who played a role in the plot could easily die here. Perhaps they have already been favored by some important people with their talents, and after this experience, they will live a good life. By the way, remember to give the reward first. With this speeding component, you can run faster. Okay. Cold Xiye's mind moved and the task panel appeared in front of her. Then, she clicked on the completed task to complete it. The sound of the system quickly rang out. Congratulations to the host for completing the task. The overspeed component has been installed and will take effect after reactivating the martial soul. Given that the host is currently in a bottleneck state, we are releasing a task to acquire a soul ring that has been over 1,000 years old as a container for self-programming skills, with the task reward being a storage device. This task allows for additional challenges. Obtaining a 10,000-year soul ring and obtaining an additional skill. Simulation. This skill can disguise the soul rings hunted by the host, up to the highest level of soul beasts the host has ever seen, and can also replicate the special temperament of humans. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Wisdom for 10,000 Years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Wisdom for 10,000 Years. After some thought, Leng Xiyue realized that storage space, as a must-have for beginners, was also indispensable. It was interesting to simulate this skill, as if it was prepared to make her hide herself. If there is no plan to take risks to hunt down the soul beasts that have been around for thousands of years, and the first soul ring is 1,000 years, although it is outrageous, it is not particularly outrageous. It can be fooled by some adventures as a reason, then this skill will naturally be of no use. It was the function that could replicate the temperament of others that made her a bit tempted. If she could replicate the temperament of some powerful characters, it would definitely be great to directly apply it to herself. For example, the unique temperament of a superior like Bibidong or the murderous aura of a master like Tang Hao are both good choices. This kind of temperament is generally very difficult to cultivate, don't even think about it without decades of rich experience. However, thinking that this additional task actually required her to deal with the eternal soul beast, Leng Xiyue immediately began to retreat. She was a little vegetable without even a soul ring. Isn't dealing with the eternal soul beast a dream? With the idea of pulling down a millennium soul ring, Leng Xiyue closed the task interface. As for whether it is possible to make the first soul ring 1,000 years or even tens of thousands of years old, it must be possible. The absorption process of programmable skill soul ring sounds unrelated to her, and it will definitely not be limited by the years of a normal soul master. Moreover, with the purity of spiritual energy, if a normal soul master absorbs a yellow soul ring for the same number of years, it will definitely be impossible to fully unleash its power, just like a giant wielding a toy knife that is not yet thumb long as a weapon to strike people. Therefore, the system does not even mention the possibility of absorbing a century-old soul ring. The skill output power provided by the Millennium Soul Ring should be about the same. As long as you are careful and cautious when hunting, with the help of Xiao Bai and the high-level dagger, it is not impossible to ambush and kill Millennium Soul beasts. At the worst, you can also find a plant-type soft persimmon with weaker combat power to pinch it. The problem should not be too big. At this point, Leng Xiyue said to Xiaoyu, "All right, take care of yourself and Nana, brother Xiaoyu. See you in the martial soul city in the future." After speaking, Leng Xiyue helped him replenish some soul power. "By the way, I'll borrow your auspicious words. Remember to be wary of humans, especially those who participate in the trials with us. Many people have become somewhat bloodthirsty, and no matter how kind they may seem, they must stay away." Xiaoyu looked at Leng Xiyue with some unease, and advised a few more words. "Well, I understand." Leng Xiyue nodded, her martial soul possessed her, and a white light burst out from her legs. The next second, she rushed out in the opposite direction of the evil moon's finger. Xiaoyu was just about to remind something, but the figure of Leng Xiyue had already disappeared. The figure peeking in the dark saw Leng Xiyue running away and quickly notified his superiors with a communication soul guide, then followed closely. The overspeed component, as the name suggests, can be understood as a type of thruster installed on leg armor, which can greatly improve speed after increasing the power of psychic use. Armor is not slow when walking or running normally, and is similar to the same level of sensitive attack soul masters. With the speeding component, she can activate full speed with her current strength, and even low-level sensitive attack soul sex may be out of reach. Of course, this speed is completely beyond her control with her current strength. If it's an open area similar to a plain, it's okay, but if it's in the forest after colliding with several large trees in a row, Leng Xiyue calmed down and didn't dare to accelerate casually anymore. The normal maximum speed of armor may already be the limit that her current level can withstand. No matter how fast her physical fitness is, she cannot keep up. However, if there are corresponding skills, there should be a stable release process, and perhaps she can gradually adapt by then. As Leng Xiyue was searching for the Millennium Soul Beast everywhere, the little white beside him suddenly said, "I think although the system's tasks are somewhat strict for you, they are not impossible to complete. In a sense, the lifespan of these soul rings is linked to the strength of their skills, and the application rate of high-level soul rings will also be stronger. Apart from system tasks, you should also look for a Millennium Soul Ring. Sister, that's a soul beast that lasts for thousands of years. Not to mention whether it can be absorbed. How do you want me to kill it now?" said Leng Xiyue helplessly. If the armor material is a bit higher, she might dare to act recklessly, but if it's only the strength of a normal iron weapon, wouldn't it be slapped into pieces with just one slap? As Xiaobai mentioned earlier, the strength of spiritual energy converted from local energy is far inferior to that directly drawn from the void. The penetration of spiritual weapons cannot reach the level of ignoring all armor, and they still face resistance like physical weapons. Generally, Millennium Soul beasts with low bloodlines and just recently broken through may still have some hope of piercing armor damage, but there is absolutely no possibility for Millennium Soul beasts. She couldn't gamble with the dagger in her hand on whether it could penetrate the armor of the Eternal Soul Beast without confirmation. Isn't there a strategy in your hometown called, "Drive the tiger and swallow the wolf"? Look, now there's someone who you can't afford to provoke following you. If nothing unexpected happens, you can't run away without getting rid of them. Speaking, Xiaobai reached out a little and a trace of spiritual energy dissipated, marking the strong individual with unknown strength. That was a young man in his 30s, quite handsome, wearing the uniform of the Martial Soul Hall. At this moment, he was cautiously following behind, quietly observing the every move of Leng Xiyue, with a badge of 3 golden long swords intertwined on his chest. In the system of the Martial Soul Palace, a sword symbolizes a level. As for the golden long sword, Cold Xiyue, it is unclear. However, in the area of the Martial Soul City, this age should be a Soul King. A strong person of this level is obviously something she cannot resist now. Upon hearing Xiaobai's words, Leng Xiyue's eyes lit up and she said, "Are you saying that? Go provoke a soul beast that has been around for thousands of years, and let him help you solve it. If he can't solve it, you'll be in trouble and can just run away, but if he can solve it, then you'll be in trouble." Xiaobai smiled slightly and said, "No matter who killed the soul ring, I can help you absorb it into your soul space. After absorbing it, you can still rub it any way you want. The specific programming matters are handled by the forging furnace, so feel free to go find it." Okay. Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue no longer hesitated and ran towards the interior of the forest. Although the Martial Soul Forest was built around the Martial Soul City, the quality of the soul beasts here is indeed not low, and it has always been an exclusive hunting ground for the Martial Soul Palace. Some of the soul beast populations with greater harm have long been eliminated by the Martial Soul Hall. Although there are still many powerful beings left, they have learned from their past experiences and dare not provoke the Martial Soul Hall to attack humans on the road. Even other low-level soul beasts dare not be killed casually, fearing to damage this new ecosystem and attract the attention of the Martial Soul Hall. As for the century millennium soul beasts without wisdom, if those who come to the Martial Soul City for business or pass by do not even have the ability to deal with these low-level soul beasts, how can they deserve to come to the Martial Soul City? After circling around in the martial soul forest and avoiding several thousand-year-old soul beasts, Leng Xiyue finally found a creature that has been around for over 10,000 years. That was a wolf. She didn't know what kind of wolf it was. At this moment it was lying by the lake sleeping soundly, unaware of her arrival. Compared to its low alertness, it may be because Leng Xiyue's strength was too weak to meet its warning standards. After thinking for a moment, Leng Xiyue found a large stone from the side and threw it at its head. Without hesitation, she turned around and ran towards the master of the martial soul hall. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Drive the tiger and swallow the wolf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Drive the tiger and swallow the wolf. As a soul king powerhouse at the age of only 33, Wang Yan has always been extremely proud. Graduating from the Martial Soul Academy at this age is already considered a top student, and in his view, it is just around the corner to reach the pinnacle of life in the future. Then, he was assigned to squat in the grass. In the Martial Soul City, if you have a grandfather at or above the level of a Soul Douluo, or if you are favored by a significant figure, even if your talent is not the best, you can still join a comfortable civilian and become a special envoy sent to various places, making a lot of money and returning glory. However, if you are just a genius who appears from the bottom by chance, we can only start exercising from the bottom according to the rules. Even though the workplace is so unfair, he still has a great passion for work. It is precisely this serious and responsible attitude towards work that led him to discover the girl with innate soul power. What is this? This is a remarkable achievement. It is not a problem for such a great achievement to be directly praised by the Pope. As a guide, the girl will definitely be grateful to herself in the future. But as he followed, he felt something was wrong. The girl ran to the gathering area of the 10,000-year soul beasts, found a demon wolf sleeping soundly, picked up a stone and threw it towards its head. Then, she ran towards him, turning into a white escape light, and soon ran away. In such weather, soul beasts are reluctant to move, often sleeping for several days. The demon wolf was suddenly disturbed while sleeping soundly, and his eyes turned red in an instant. He looked at Wang Yan squatting in the nearby grass and without saying a word, rushed forward. Lie down. Wang Yan was shocked as he saw the demon wolf rushing towards him. He was about to turn around and run away, but when he saw the breed of the demon wolf, he immediately gave up the idea. Magic wolf is just a very broad concept, referring to a wolf that has undergone special mutations and is very bloodthirsty and cruel. On this basis, there are also special mutant breeds such as Gale Magic Wolf and Blaze Magic Wolf. The one in front of me is a fierce wind demon wolf, with a very fast speed. As a strong attack-type soul master, he must not be able to escape. There is no other way, he can only persevere. The bloodline of the wind demon wolf among the soul beasts is also quite good. Wang Yan, a recently broken soul king, has some difficulty dealing with ordinary 10,000-year soul beasts. Even if he can defeat this wind demon wolf, he will have to pay a price. Since war was already inevitable at this moment, Wang Yan no longer hesitated and summoned his own martial soul. A shining warrior sword, and the wind demon wolf flew towards him. He dared not resist, but could avoid it with a sliding shovel. Taking advantage of the gap when the demonic wolf turned around, the black soul ring behind Wang Yan suddenly lit up and said, "Fifth soul skill, lightning strike." The lightning around the samurai sword was booming, and the rolling thunder continued to gather. Then Wang Yan swung his sword fiercely, and a thunderbolt over 2 meters long cut out from the samurai sword, flying straight towards the fierce wind demon wolf. The fierce wind demon wolf did not dodge or dodge, and its momentum suddenly climbed up. The strong wind beside him waved his claws one after another, and several equally powerful wind blades rushed towards the thunderous blade. The wind blade and the blade collided, and the two huge energies countered each other, neither side gaining an advantage. However, Wang Yan's figure closely followed behind the blade. As the two energies dissipated, he suddenly rushed out and leaped forward. The purple soul ring behind him lit up, and a powerful and heavy sword fell like thunder towards the fierce wind demon wolf. He knew very well that the best way to deal with soul beasts, if not for the purpose of hunting soul rings, was to scare them and make them afraid to escape. Therefore, he directly used his most powerful moves. The wind demon wolf knew that this human was difficult to deal with, and had already run away before. However, at this moment, it was still angry and did not consider the possibility of retreating. The force of the strong wind concentrated in its hind legs and front paws, and it forcefully ejected from the ground, charging towards Wang Yan in the air. Seeing the sharp claws of the wind demon wolf rushing towards his chest, Wang Yan gritted his teeth and didn't defend himself, charging forward directly. At this point, his attack was complete, and drawing a knife back to defend was undoubtedly a chaotic move. Seeing that the opponent had no intention of defending, he directly slashed at its neck and then slightly turned sideways. This move is undoubtedly a trade-in for trade. If the opponent's claws only scratch their arm, and you can chop it into a serious injury with this move, it is undoubtedly a blood gain. Unexpectedly, the wind demon wolf suddenly lowered its head, and its sharp claws, which had originally aimed towards his chest, grabbed his abdomen. Wang Yan's knife also struck it firmly on its back. At this point it was already too late to retreat, and the samurai sword in his hand could not be pulled out. Therefore, Wang Yan immediately withdrew his martial soul and directly met its claws with both hands. The force of this claw is very strong, enough to open his stomach. At the moment of contact, his arms were torn open by the claws of the wind demon wolf, and his flesh and blood became blurry. His abdomen also left a bloodstain, but fortunately, he was not fatally injured. The powerful and heavy sword also caused considerable damage to the wind demon wolf, almost cutting off its spine. After this claw, it no longer had the courage to attack. It woke up from its wake and fell to the ground, howling and struggling to escape into the forest. At this moment, Wang Yan was also not feeling well. His blocked hands had already exposed a dense white bone, and his whole body was trembling incessantly. As he saw the wind demon wolf preparing to retreat, he quickly sat on the ground, took a few pills from his waist, crushed them, and sprinkled them on his wound to start breathing. At this moment, he saw the little girl he had been following holding a dagger with a cold gleam in her hands, turning back from the direction she had previously run away, like a white lightning bolt, charging directly towards the fierce wind demon wolf with this unstoppable momentum. At this moment, the wind demon wolf looked lethargic, and its spine was almost broken. Its reaction was not as good as before. As soon as it turned around and heard some movement in the distance, Leng Xiyue had already heavily inserted a dagger into it, and then rolled it around a few times. Leng Xiyue was also dizzy at this moment. Just now, she was just aiming at the direction of the wind demon wolf under the guidance of Xiao Bai and launching a charge. In fact, if the wind demon wolf reacted faster, it was also possible for her to hit the tree head-on. Pulling the speed to full with current strength is much more thrilling than riding a roller coaster for an ordinary person. However, at this moment it was a critical moment of life and death. Leng Xiyue endured her dizziness and pulled out the dagger. Taking advantage of the pain that the wind demon wolf had not yet reacted, she made several blind stabs in a row. Then she withdrew and ran away, several tens of meters away, finally watching with peace of mind. She was ready to charge up and repair the knife at that moment. As the lowest and Soul King level dagger, breaking through the defense of the wind demon wolf is naturally not a problem. In fact, the grade of this dagger may be much higher than Leng Xiyue imagined. The knife that just stabbed the wind demon wolf was like cutting tofu, without encountering any resistance, which had little to do with the rapid charge, because the subsequent cuts also had the same feel, with each cut completely penetrating. Even so, she dared not step forward rashly. The attack of the wind demon wolf only caused her a slight injury or death, which was not a joke. At this point, the wind demon wolf was already at the end of its strength. Its spine had already been broken, and it couldn't run fast. Now, it had eaten these few cuts solidly, and its body was bleeding profusely as it struggled to walk towards the depths of the forest. It was estimated that it had injured an important organ. Before taking a few steps, it fell to the ground with a thud, and a black soul ring rose from its corpse. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Soul Skills and Armor Defense. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Soul Skills and Armor Defense. Wang Yan beside him was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. When the little girl first activated her martial soul, he could see it clearly. No matter how talented she was, her soul power was only 10 levels. Not to mention the grade of the dagger, the speed of this charge was a bit outrageous. Although it may not seem as proficient in using this speed, the upper limit of this speed is now available upon activating the martial soul. How fast will it be in the future? He dare not even think about it. Before he could finish his shock, the girl walked straight to the black soul ring, sat down cross-legged, and reached out her hand. The black soul ring immediately penetrated her body. Damn it! Did you absorb it directly? Looking at this scene, Wang Yan's heart was like a galloping horse, but he didn't have much culture. The shock in his heart could only be expressed in such a single word. Seeing the young girl close her eyes and calm down, it seemed like she was really starting to absorb it. He quickly mobilized his soul power to recover from the wound on his body, accompanied by the healing medicine he carried with him. This kind of injury that only damaged part of the skin was not a big deal. After drinking a few more bottles of healing medicine and recovering to the point where she could barely lift the knife, Wang Yan stood up and went around to be vigilant, regardless of whether she had truly absorbed this eternal soul ring. When she woke up, she would understand. Leng Xiyue also knew that the people in the martial soul hall would not do anything to her, and there were no other soul beasts around her. So she confidently returned to the soul space, ready to absorb this soul ring. As soon as I returned to the soul space, the sound of the system rang out. Congratulations to the host for completing the task, obtaining a storage space with a volume of 1,000 cubic meters, and also obtaining a simulation module that can adjust their temperament and soul ring level at any time. Leng Xiyue rubbed her hands. This storage equipment is a rare item, and 1,000 cubic meters is not small. You should know that Tang San's is only 20.4 cubic meters. However, at present, the only storage device is obviously not the most important, and the top priority is to first turn this soul ring into her skill. The eternal soul ring was covered by a wave of energy from the system, and soon the soul of the wind demon wolf was extracted and then fell to the ground. The fierce wind demon wolf looked fierce, wishing to break down Cold Xiyue into 8 pieces and keep howling. This is the soul of the wind demon wolf. The souls of soul beasts in this world seem to exist based on soul rings. As long as soul beasts over 10,000 years old die, there will be such a soul interfering with it, and the difficulty of absorption can be imagined. However, as long as it is extracted and absorbed with our help, it won't be a problem. As he spoke, Xiaobai reached out and a hidden light shot out from the crystal at the top of the palace, hitting the soul of the wind demon wolf, who disappeared instantly. Now, it's time to think about what kind of skill you need. Currently, this skill can only receive a bonus in terms of speed. You can also think of a skill that is not related to speed. Of course, this will greatly reduce the maximum power that this skill can achieve. Of course that's already been planned. Leng Xiyue rubbed her hands. In fact, after learning that she could choose skills, she had already thought of many options. It's related to speed, so of course we need to choose sword moves. What sword moves are powerful and graceful? Quickly approaching, flying with one sword, receiving 4 increasingly strong blows, and finally chopping down with one sword, it can be said to be perfect. In her impression, many games have similar moves, but if she insists on saying what impressed her the most, it was naturally Yasuo's Storm Slash. Although she has never played before, she has seen many people act handsome and rush up, give away their heads, and even criticize their teammates for not knowing how to play. This impression is truly unforgettable. It's just a matter of turning blowing the wind and flying into a direct lift, so it shouldn't be a big problem. Every time the sword is wielded, it is in a different position and moves rapidly, making it difficult to counter. With the blessing of eternal soul rings and spiritual energy, it can at least reach the level of instant killing at the same level. After listening to Leng Xiyue's description, Xiaobai nodded and said, as long as you like it. I don't know if it's because Xingling has already broken away from the primitive way of melee, or if it's due to a lack of skills. In short, Xiaobai didn't give any advice. After uploading the operation process related to this move in my mind to the forge began to transform the soul ring, and it was not long before the transformation was completed. From the outside, it seems that this soul ring has not changed much, but the skills it originally came with have now been replaced with new ones. Please name this skill for the host. Leng Xiyue thought for a moment and said, why don't we just call it instantaneous slash? It doesn't matter what her name is, she's not as junior high as a local person, she even needs to shout out her skills. The renovation has been completed and is currently being integrated with the host. Accompanied by the sound of the system, Leng Xiyue felt that this soul ring was slowly merging with her own soul, and she also had some enlightenment in her mind. She had a deeper understanding of the speed of control, and this new skill seemed to be innate. Of course, it was necessary to practice it thoroughly if she wanted to use it. This move does not strictly limit the types of weapons she can conjure up. It is also possible to use a hammer or something, but it is not convenient to use swords. As the absorption of the soul ring was completed, she suddenly felt as if some barrier had broken, and the spiritual energy that had already reached saturation could continue to be absorbed. The sound of the system also sounded. Congratulations to the host for completing the breakthrough. Now activate a new mission. Increase the spiritual level to 20 and increase the armor strength to level 2 metal. Metal reserve demand. 10 tons. Task reward. Mind enhancement component. Leng Xiyue felt the power brought by the soul ring and couldn't help but be very satisfied, but the new mission made her feel a bit puzzled. The so-called secondary metal is basically refined iron ingots, similar to refined iron or steel, and still belongs to the ordinary level. It should not be difficult to collect. In the future, if you need to collect higher quality metals, you will have to take a chance. What puzzled her was that with armor at many parts could not be protected, even with wrist and leg protectors that could be used for blocking, wouldn't a range attack or spell be enough to harm her? So, what's the use of enhancing armor defense? As if she had a similar intention, as soon as she felt puzzled, Xiaobai glanced at her and said helplessly, "Fool, your defense range naturally cannot be just armor. It will cover your entire body with a layer of armor. Although you cannot feel it, it has already integrated into your skin, greatly enhancing the strength of your physical body. Think about it carefully, why didn't you get any scratches when you hit the tree before?" Without corresponding usage methods, spiritual energy can only help your body heal quickly, but it won't enhance your defense. I see. Upon hearing Xiaobai's words, Leng Xiyue suddenly realized. This armor is invisible and untouchable, but in reality, it seems to strengthen her skin. I don't feel much change, but it feels soft to the touch. In fact, if someone cuts at her unprotected joints such as wrist or knee, it's no different from cutting on armor. The so-called copper skin and iron bones are basically like this. Since that's the case, with so many upgraded metal armor needed, the defense is quite good at the same level. If we could have raised the armor level to a higher level by producing a lot of advanced metal earlier, it would undoubtedly be an indestructible xiaoqiang. Soul masters below the armor level would not break through her defense, which is an advantage over the attack power provided by spirit. Collecting high-quality metals in advance to enhance armor level is the quickest way to enhance combat effectiveness. In the Martial Soul City, it is estimated that metals below level 5 can be easily purchased with money, and the experience points for cultivating spiritual energy may not only be obtained from soul rings. Various high-quality medicinal herbs and cultivation resources are also feasible. These are all things that require a lot of money to purchase. In terms of cultivation resources, one can use the dividends brought by their own talents to buy some from the Martial Soul Hall for free. However, it is impossible to obtain resources up to level 20 in one step with the terrifying need of cultivating spiritual energy. It is still necessary to find ways to buy the excess parts on your own. In this way, the top priority is still to make money, relying on the ability of the forging furnace to create something that can quickly make money. I have modified the protagonist's name. If the previous chapter still shows an old name, you can clear the cache first. Subsequent updates will be changed to a new name, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Improved Review System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Improved Review System. As the soul ring was absorbed, Leng Xiyue returned to reality. The first thing she did to return to reality was to take out the storage device for the system reward. This storage device is not equipment like rings and necklaces, but a thin layer of stickers or tattoos that are almost imperceptible. It doesn't feel much to the touch, whether it's summoning or absorbing items, just let the stickers get close. Besides, it does not affect any function or the release of spiritual energy, so Leng Xiyue directly attached it to the palm of her right hand and quickly put away the dagger. Who knows what will happen later, it's safer to put it away first. Subsequently, she quickly used the simulation module to turn the black soul ring into yellow, and then summoned it out, as if it had just been absorbed. "Little girl, have you woken up?" Wang Yan walked over when he saw that Leng Xiyue had completed her absorption. However, when he saw that the soul ring on her body was only yellow, he couldn't help but be stunned. "Strange, did you absorb black just now?" Uncle, what's up with you?" Leng Xiyue pretended to be stunned and asked knowingly. Regardless of whether the other party can accept the fact that black turns yellow, as long as she keeps using yellow soul rings, even if he claims that his first soul ring comes from a perennial soul beast, no one will believe him, and instead he will be seen as a fool trying to boast about his achievements. It was precisely because there was no third person present that she confidently absorbed it in front of him. Cough cough, it's like this. I think you know you have good talent, and I want to lead you back to the Martial Soul City. Wang Yan didn't beat around the bush, but directly explained his purpose. He is a smart person, no matter how the soul ring turns yellow, it has nothing to do with him. As long as it is innate and full of soul power, it is enough. What if I don't go? Is it difficult for you to tie me back? Leng Xiyue asked in reverse. Of course I can't stop you, after all, our Martial Soul Hall is not a bandit. Wang Yan spread out his hand and then pretended to be casual, saying, you just gave up the opportunity to become a direct disciple of the Pope and countless cultivation resources, as well as the qualification to be directly crowned as a saint and the next Pope at the age of 18. After all, everyone has their own aspirations, and some people lick their blood every day just to earn some money in exchange for cultivation resources. No matter how talented they are just a soul king, soul emperor. But some people don't have the qualification to climb to the sky, but they just want to go wandering, which is truly sad and lamentable. I'm going, is the treatment so good? Upon hearing this, Leng Xiyue was immediately shocked. You should know that although Hulena was adopted as a disciple by Bibidong, she did not directly become a candidate for sainthood. When she became a saint, she was already 20.5, which can be said to be quite difficult. This is still because there are no other candidates with the same talent as her, otherwise we might have to engage in a power struggle. However, upon careful consideration, there were only 6 people in Douluo who were born with full soul power and had a name. Apart from Tang San, Xiao Wu, Leng Xiyue, and other 3 who were cheating, it was normal for them to receive such attention. Now that she is only 6 years old, in this golden period of cultivation, if she can obtain the resources of the Martial Soul Hall, then the path of cultivation will definitely be extremely smooth. Similarly, with such a high status and a unique nature of their own cultivation system, they stand out among the crowd and may even be caught and studied by a group of old monsters. If you have some strength, it's okay to say that you can at least run. What do you need now? If you're caught, probably even the novice won't be able to save you, right? Seeing that Leng Xiyue was somewhat moved, Wang Yan chuckled and continued to bewitch. I can guarantee that there is nothing better than the martial soul hall. With your talent, it is probably more comfortable to be in the martial soul hall than those imperial princesses. So, even if those wandering children are not suitable for battle, do they still have to go through that kind of gu cultivation trial? Leng Xiyue narrowed her eyes and suddenly changed the topic, her face also turning a bit unpleasant. She still harbors some resentment towards the experiences of Hulena and Xiyue. Wang Yan didn't expect Leng Xiyue to be so concerned about this matter, but he still said, of course not. If we were from their perspective, we did create a terrifying and desperate atmosphere, but in reality, we would quietly pick them up after the start of the battle, as the martial soul is not very suitable for combat. These people only need to contribute to the prosperity of the martial soul hall in the future, send them to a specialized orphanage or find some suitable families for adoption, and there is no need to increase efforts to cultivate them. As for the remaining martial soul masters, of course, they need to be strict. The so-called strictness will not take their lives, but more importantly, it is to cultivate their character. If they really reach their limit and cannot persist, we will save them and rank them based on their survival time, which will determine the degree of resource allocation they can obtain in the future. Some members of large families will also choose and adopt them based on this ranking and comprehensive performance, and their future prospects can be imagined. Speaking of this, Wang Yan's face showed a hint of envy. He was adopted by a member of the big family, and his identity was already much better than that of someone from the lower echelons of the martial soul city. This kind of trial is also one of the essential courses in the Martial Soul Academy. At that time, it will be even more rigorous than it is now, and no one will be around to take care of it. Death is really death. If you can't even accept the current level of test, how will you fight against the evil soul master in the future? Fight against those murderers and lawbreakers, and deal with ferocious soul beasts. As for those who take the opportunity to actively seek other people to kill and seek the trial to end as soon as possible, in our view, they have the potential to become evil soul masters and villains. We will not keep such people. If you did not take action at that time, I will directly kill them, and the remaining marked people will also undergo a silent cleaning after the game ends. That's also why there are no rules. Without rules, they can unleash their true nature, and we can also discern and review from them. I see. After hearing these words, Leng Xiyue nodded with satisfaction. She had also thought before, how could the martial soul hall waste talent? It is said that only 100 people will be left, but it is not up to them to decide when to end. There is too much room for covert operation. If a soul king like Wang Yan comes to take care of a genius like Hulena and Evil Moon, then the guardians of others must also be at the level of soul sect. This safety level is quite high, which shows the importance that the martial soul hall attaches to the safety of these children. Every soul master who can fight is extremely precious, but the greenhouse cannot cultivate elite soldiers who can fight well. For these wandering children from humble backgrounds, such survival trials are obviously very necessary. People should make the most of their talents, resources should be utilized to maximize profits, which is what the martial soul hall wants. Wang Yan cannot deceive her about this kind of thing. After all, the other party wants to bring her back to the martial soul city. If these common sense things still deceive her, it will undoubtedly be a direct confrontation. End of this chapter.